Hi, my name is Tish, and today we are going to be discussing the use of lubricant for sex. We are going to challenge some of the beliefs around the use of lube and some of the misconceptions of lube. Just so we're on the right page, that lube that comes in a bottle, right, that you pick up from the supermarket, that's the lube that we're going to be discussing today, right? So exogenous forms of lubrication. So let's jump right in. Lube can enhance sex. It's meant to enhance sex when the conditions for sex are right. But if you're not aware of these conditions, it's likely that you're using lube. You're using lube to force conditions for sex. Lube is a performance enhancer. It helps with arousal. In many ways, it's similar to Viagra. And I know that's a bold statement, but hear me out. When a man becomes aroused, the blood flow increases to the erectile tissue. This is the same for a woman. Blood flow increases to the vulva. Hope you know what a vulva is. Blood flow increases to the vulva. These tissues relax and swell in preparation to receive. Okay? So let's take an average cycle for a woman. So her menstrual cycle is, let's just say 28 days. And so there's a period, a window, right? It's essentially a window for sex, right? And in this window, the blood flow increases to the vulva, the tissues relax, swell, and the body produces its own lubricant, right? This is to make penetration possible, okay? It coincides with ovulation, right? So that's the period where you're fertile for having a baby. So if we are honoring our physiology, then as women, we only have a small window to receive in. Okay, I'm not saying that you can't do other things outside of this window. You can, but from if you're wanting to receive, if you're wanting to have penetrative sex, then this is the time, or there is a window where you do this, where this happens, where the body is open to receive, right? Okay, is that clear? I hope that's clear. So why would we need an exogenous form of lubrication if we make our own lubricant? If we, and I've mentioned this, if we consider the menstrual cycle, there are phases within that cycle where, as mentioned, moisture levels, tissue elasticity, the space inside the actual vagina is larger. Okay? So, does it not make sense? Does this not make sense to... I don't know why this isn't taught at school. Why isn't this taught at school? Right. So, I mean, we know why it's not taught, right? Because it's... Okay. Arousal is also much higher. In fact, yeah, your arousal. Arousal is significantly higher in this window, okay, compared to other phases of the menstrual cycle. Your body is primed to receive, okay, and your physiology is opening up and allowing you to receive. Can you accept this? Can you understand this? You know, we like to force conditions. That's what we do. We like to force things, don't we? I really got to stop forcing shit. So, I got some notes down here. I will argue that this is the true definition of consent. It's whether or not your body is open to receive. It's not what your beliefs tell you, right? Because you might have an insecure belief about yourself, and the belief might say something like, oh, well, yeah, you know, I because you somewhat idolize men as women. This is a belief that we carry, and so you might force your body to do things that you don't actually want to do. Yeah, it's not what your beliefs tell you, unfortunately. Oh, I'm so sorry. Your beliefs can tell you that if you don't have sex, that this man, well, you won't satisfy this man, okay? And there is an element of, well, my survival depends on this. And so it's likely that he won't be satisfied. It's likely that he will leave you, okay? But this is the limiting belief, right? This is a reflection. This belief that you have is a reflection of something that you're carrying that you need to actually release. And unfortunately, yes, it means releasing the man, releasing the limiting belief, right? Because people are just a set of walking, talking, limiting beliefs. And so if that's a belief that you're carrying, then you're going to meet that in your environment. You're going to find a person, and that person is going to reflect to you that is going to reflect that limiting belief to you. And then you're going to be somewhat conflicted, right? Because we take things a bit too personally, don't we? It's the illusion of separation, right? We fail to see that this is about me. It's not about the other person. So, and so when you become aware that you are carrying these beliefs, and I talk a lot about limiting beliefs and how they essentially limit you from creating new experiences and just creating and innovating in new ways. And so, yeah, check out my episodes, because maybe something will click for you. Side note, somewhat relevant, we are all carrying some level of trauma, okay? And men come from they're very duty bound, right? And so they carry a lot of conflict. I mean, we all do. And they are essentially seeking safety inside of your body, right? Do you want to be the container for that conflict, for that trauma? Do you want to enable that? Do you want to enable conflict? I mean, it is just a representation of where you enable conflict within you, but now you're physically enabling it within you too. So if you're missing that, start paying attention, because not only are you enabling it within you, but you're physically enabling it within you. Again, let's go back to lube. Lube makes penetration possible. It makes it a more tolerable experience, because without it, the conditions just aren't right. So is it that we consent to sex when conditions are suboptimal? Because as women, we have this collective belief that our survival depends on fulfilling the needs of men. And the truth is, the more that you enable these limiting beliefs, the more power that we give to these limiting beliefs, the more lube you're going to need. So I'd stock up if I was you. I'd stock up. By forcing conditions, we are neglecting to honor ourselves, our physiology. And when this happens, dysfunction occurs, right? Dysfunction occurs when neglect exists. And as women, we have a tendency to neglect our needs. This is why things like autoimmune shows up, right? It's a reflection of that. It's a physical manifestation of where you neglect yourself. This is why it's so prevalent in women. This is why there is conflict and disease. This is why it's so prevalent on the planet. We are failing to honor ourselves. And when we do that, we fail each other. As a society, we need to learn to become less goal orientated, especially when conditions are suboptimal. Okay, so if we can learn to distinguish between what conditions are good versus not so good, then we can pioneer and innovate in new ways, right? I was just scrolling Google articles, and the articles said, so I'm quoting from the article, lube makes sex less painful, reduces friction, and prevents injury. And these themes came up in the articles and or similar claims, and you know, if I was a youngster and I read any of those statements, I mean, it's not very empowering, is it? Why is sex painful? Why would injury be present in this? I mean, I was convinced that this was a loving act, is it not? I mean, it's not loving if you're not honoring your body, right? That's a paradox. The articles also mentioned that people might need lube because of stress, dehydration, or the use of birth control, right? Again, they are just addressing the symptoms and not the root cause of why you might need lube. We like to mask things, don't we? As a society, we're not very good at being very honest. And if we look at stress occurs when you receive new inspiration, okay, but it's conflicting a belief that you are carrying, right? And so that's where you're conflicted. It's because you haven't quite integrated new information with old information, or you have a hard time doing that. And I talk about brain-heart coherence, so that you can receive new inspiration and you can learn to integrate this and let go of limiting beliefs. So I've made videos on that. You can go and find those. But let's look at a limiting belief. So for example, a limiting belief could be that your menstrual cycle is somewhat inconvenient, and so inconvenient that, well, in fact, it's so inconvenient that a man in a lab or a woman with poor boundaries went ahead and produced a pill and a bottle of lube to solve this inconvenience. Your body is self-regulating. This is why we have a menstrual cycle. Women who train too much and restrict calories lose their periods. Why are they doing this? What's motivating them? What's the limiting belief that they're carrying? The female body is meant to be fertile, okay? And And this isn't just limited to women who train too much, and this is just any sort of hormonal imbalance. What is the limiting belief that you are carrying? The body needs to feel safe in order to release. Okay? It's just the way it is. It's just the way that it is. If you neglect any aspect of yourself, including your physiology, then of course infertility will rise, autoimmune. As we become more masculine, and when I say masculine, essentially just neglecting your needs as a female. As you become more masculine, you disrupt your physiology. Whether it's a relationship that forces you to neglect your physiology, or it's a job or a circumstance, or people, as women, we need to create our own systems that honor our cyclical nature, that honor our needs. I find it so strange that we are trying to get equal rights, equal pay, when we're just not equal. You know, men, they're pretty consistent. Just take so let's take 30 days, because for women, we have a 30-day cycle. They have pretty consistent energy levels. For a woman, it is going up and down. It is a fucking wave, right? Our energy levels fluctuate so drastically, and we are trying to basically put our physiology into this masculine container. And as we're doing that, we are requesting for some equal pay, right? As you do this, like, you are under fucking cutting yourself. You're undercutting yourself, right? You don't have consistent energy levels. It's going up and it's coming down. And you're trying to fit into masculine systems. Obviously, your physiology is gonna suffer. And as it suffers, and at the same time, you're requesting for equal rights and equal pay and equal say. And it's just not equal, right? In fact, we do more because we have to self-regulate our physiology. And I really, you're just, it's not equal, right? If anything, you should be demanding more. Okay? A lot more. Right? We are the ones that we have to bring the fucking people through the fucking body, right? And you're asking for equal pay, right? And it's not even like a one-time thing. You have to continue to self-regulate so that you have the mechanism to bring people onto this fucking planet. Just get a bit passionate sometimes. Yeah. We bring them onto the planet, and then the boys are still shooting, like, the boys are still pointing guns at each other, and it's just like, what the fuck? Like, why the fuck should I bring something through here? Why the fuck should I bring something through this portal? They're just they're playing their stupid games, and then we put them in our bodies. We put these, this trauma, this conflict in our bodies, these limiting beliefs in our bodies, right? And they're still out there pointing guns at each other because I don't know. I don't really get it. Right? I mean, they're just pointing guns at themselves. It's like, what's the word? When you're like, when you're cutting yourself, what's that word? That's what it is. I mean, do we really want to bring people through? And then just what we ask for equal pay. Can we get some equal pay, please? I want equal say. I want equal pay. So let's dial it back a bit. If we can begin to opt out of limiting beliefs, right? Old ways of doing things, okay? Because if we do things the same way, we're going to get the same results, and we're never going to reach. If we can stop enabling and creating space within ourselves both physically and emotionally. If we can begin to do that, if we can, the article said we're apparently dehydrated, so if we can drink some water, but that does correspond with the fucking soil systems, doesn't it? Isn't it funny that the soils are so dehydrated that they're not very fertile? A little bit like us. You're paying attention. If you begin to do these things, and if you track your cycle, if you start addressing the root cause, not only will you restore your body's natural ability to produce its own lube, but your overall health and sense of well-being will increase tenfold. If we continue to choose conflicting beliefs, we will continue to see conflict on a global scale. So if you can begin to dismantle or disable limiting beliefs that you are carrying within, because it's one mind, as you do this, it will start to ripple out. Okay, that's when you start shifting things within you, you start to observe shifts in your environment too. Your decisions matter. The way you behave, the way you choose to behave, what you enable matters. So we are somewhat aware that our menstrual cycle is one of those conditions that we need to pay attention to. Let's just think about this. Your body will inhibit arousal at different phases of that cycle in preparation to produce and release eggs. Men don't have higher sex drive than women. Our capacity to maintain that sex drive is lower, but during the phase where we are wanting intimacy, we are wanting to connect in an intimate way, i.e. sex, I would argue that sex drive in women is higher. But arousal is inhibited. Let's just get this clear. Arousal is inhibited in women because of the cyclical events that give potential to life. And this is apparently inconvenient. Your body is only wanting to receive on a handful of days. I mean, you could smoke a lot of plants and force conditions that way. We've all done this. We all deal with addiction, don't we? When you are dependent on getting a chemical from a person, place, or thing, and the way that you get that, if it peaks and then immediately declines, immediately steep decline, this is not a good addiction. It's not good. It's not good. Okay, let's talk about some other conditions that you can start to become aware of. We've been speaking about physiological conditions and how limiting beliefs can affect your physiology. But a good question to ask is, not even ask, but just to become aware, would be things like how secure you are within yourself. Do you trust yourself, right? And if you don't, then you're going to try to look for that in that relationship. If you're somewhat insecure, right? And if this has not been nurtured by the people that were responsible for your development, you're likely to find yourself in compromised situations, i.e. in a relationship that is testing that security or that insecurity. And it's usually only after you connect with that person that you start to become more responsible, because, or you might just jump into another relationship. You know, we do this too, don't we? But you can think of this this person that is testing you as, you can think of it as distortion or static, okay? Because we're just walking, talking beliefs. And when you're confronted with a belief that somewhat challenges you, then you're confronted with it because it is wanting you or getting you to become aware of what it is that you're carrying. What happens is that over time we forget what beliefs, these limiting beliefs, we forget that we are carrying them, or we have refused to look at them, and so they've been buried down. This is the subconscious. It's buried down in the subconscious. And so we find ourselves in with people, places, circumstances that I'm thinking of the word excavation, but that help to uncover these beliefs by triggering us. But we get a little bit caught up in the trigger itself. You might get a bit defensive, and then forget that they're actually just revealing to me the beliefs that I need to release. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It might appear like a negative thing that has happened, but it happens because behavior is so patternized that we need these triggers to reveal to us where we are failing to, or what we are failing to see about ourselves. And so once you start to release these limiting beliefs, once you do start nurturing that security from within, that trust from within, this becomes simpatico with the people that you start connecting with. The more secure that you are within yourself, the more secure your connections become. And so if you still find yourself connecting with people where there's some doubt, some hesitation, it is likely that there's something that you need to work through within yourself. For example, there was a period where I would date guys who smoked a lot. And they were all slightly different, but they still had, there was this theme, addiction was still a very prominent theme. And so what it enabled me to do, it enabled me to see the things that I was addicted to. Every time you meet someone new, you're like, holy shit, I'm about to learn something more about my dark history. So all these things play a significant role in things like arousal and the downstream effects that arousal has on the body in terms of your body being well lubricated. So let's segue into being well lubricated during sex itself. So just to recap, so up to this point, we understand that being well lubricated means that your body is primed, your physiology is in a good place to receive. It's also indicative of how much pleasure you're receiving during sex. So if you become dry. So if moisture levels decrease during sex, then he doesn't know what he's doing, or you don't know what you're doing. you haven't taken the time to understand your physiology, or you have poor boundaries. But if you are using lube can actually mask whether or not you're actually enjoying, if your body's enjoying something. And so this can be very misleading, not just for yourself and you knowing what your body likes, doesn't like, but also your partner hasn't got a clue, right? You're using fake lube. I mean, he doesn't even know if he's pleasuring you because, well, you've got fake lube on. You're wearing fake lube. Exogenous lube masks that feedback that you would naturally produce in response to a new position, change of tempo, etc. So in actual fact, it acts as a barrier for communication. And I'm guilty. I'm guilty for this. Sounds have been used to channel energy, right? Women make sounds in childbirth, right? This is why it's not an accurate measure for pleasure, okay? You need to pay attention to her moisture levels, right? As a society, we have a hard time honoring ourselves, our bodies, and accepting our limits. There appears to be an element of discrimination and comparison that occurs that really prevents us from honoring ourselves. This is why porn is so detrimental. If your first ideas came from porn, raise your hand. There is a huge mind-body disconnect in this industry. The use of performance enhancers, lube, Viagra are abused. This is a toxic industry. Don't use this platform as education because it's not education. It is a male-centric, a male's perspective. And as females, we look at this and then we try to mold to that. So stay away from porn unless you want a man to tell you how to do your job. It's so misleading for young women, don't you think? Because I haven't watched porn I don't know, it's been some time now. And so when I would watch it, the first 30 minutes is focused on male pleasure, followed by more male pleasure, finishing with more male pleasure. And you can see, as women, we know when, because we're so good at faking it, and we can see it. We can see when other women are really faking their pleasure, and it's just disheartening, isn't it? And so if you're a young woman, I think I made a video on navigating sex. So watch that, in fact. But if you're a young woman, stay away from, don't watch stuff, right? Because you are learning, you are conditioning your mind. And so whenever you're watching stuff, so just be aware of what you are learning in general, what you are exposing your mind to. But the advice one piece of advice that I gave in that video was self-discovery, to explore what it is that your body likes and experiment with yourself before sharing yourself with another person. So, okay, and to finish up, you might be wondering, well, does lube have any use? And in terms of penetration, yes, for enhancement, when the conditions are right. So become aware. This video hopefully has highlighted some of those conditions for you. Or perhaps you knew this stuff and this was just reinforcement. But you don't want to block that communication pathway because, well, you don't learn much from doing that, do you? As a society, we like to cover things up. We like to mask things, because once we become somewhat aware that there's something off, there is an obligation to confront that. And most of us are barely floating, and so we rather not look, right? Or we rather not become aware. So I think that's more or less what I want to say on this topic. Comment your thoughts and experiences. Send in your questions. Share the video with someone that you feel will benefit from this. Like, share, and subscribe if you want me to continue sharing messages like this. And I will see you in the comments.